Welcome back, brothers and sisters. Look, I just wanted to come on here and do a quick video to remind everybody, since I didn't really go over it in my last video, so everybody understands what times we are looking at. So you've got to know what time it is in Israel for you, for our watch, and we are in our watch right now. So for me right now, at the time I'm making this video, it is 4:30 a.m. in Israel, and while it is the 11th for us, it is already the 12th for the Jews. But please understand, our watch is going to go into the 12th as well. So when is the highest probability of a rapture time? Well, it could be early in the morning, Israel time, because that's when the first fruits were. So we could be looking at any time from a sun up till around 9 a.m. is a high probability. Another very, very high probability, and it's the one that I think is most likely, will be around noontime in Israel, or even possibly 3 in the afternoon, because that's the time that Jesus died. Now, I've talked to y'all about this before. At the very end of tribulation, when Jesus returns and the tribulation saints are taken up, I absolutely believe that Scripture shows us that that is going to be in the evening, when it's just turning from day to night. So for me, the reason I believe it'll most likely be either noon or 3 p.m. for our most probable rapture time, if it is on this day, will be noon or 3 p.m. because for the first fruits it was in the morning, and for the tribulation saints at the end it'll be in the evening. But that's just a theory, and I can't prove it because the Bible doesn't tell us exactly when. Another thing that I realized after I was watching my last two videos is that I believe now that we really should have been doing our count from the very end of Sukkot. The 8th day of Sukkot, that's when Jesus is going to return in 2031. So that adds another 8 days. So if you'll understand, if you've watched my last two videos, what that means that November 18th for us, 19th for the Jews, that is when tribulation begins. I thought it was going to be November 8th for us, 9th for the Jews, but it is not. Now I see that it is undoubtedly the 17th day of the second month, which is November 18th for us, 19th for the Jews. So what does that mean? That still means that right now we are at that 7 days before, that 7-day warning. That 7 days with Noah, when he was put into the ark and the door was shut. Just like with the marriage ceremony where we go up and the door is shut. Right now, and there is so much that is pointing to right now. It is just unbelievable how much. And another thing I also wanted to make clear for all those who are newer to my channel who don't really understand this yet, is that there are basically 7 months. Now we see and understand, and this is something that the Jews have understood all this time, is that there are basically 7 months. 7 months that are a reflection of themselves. And that is why, even though Jesus, when he was crucified and resurrected at the time of Passover, that's how and why he was still the atonement offering, because the months are a reflection. So this is what's really interesting, and we covered a little bit of this in one of my other videos for y'all who remembered. So looking again at that reflection image of the months, we know that on October 20th that just went by, that would have been the same time of Passover. And what we also understand from Exodus 12 is that Passover is when the midnight cry was. And that's when we look at Exodus 12, where it's at 29, where it says, "And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle." So we've talked about this before, but never with seeing it with the reflection of the months. So we know we just saw the midnight cry on October 20th. And then on October 21st, that's the reflection of the first fruits offering when Jesus ascended with the Old Testament saints. Now this is what's really, really interesting. In Daniel 8, where it says, "But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia." So, okay, I've talked to y'all about this verse several times, and this verse has really been sticking with me. So much so that I had a dream about 21 days. And I don't ever remember my dreams. But when I woke up, I was like, 21 days, 21 days, 21 days. And this has been sticking with me. And this is what I realized. Going from October 21st, which just passed, 21 days, brings us to November 11th. And again, November 11th for us, 12th for the Jews. We're really focused on the Jews more than anything because we know that's the calendar that God goes by. But I do both so that it's easier for us to understand. But of course, our day is probably going to go into the 12th as well. But again, I've been going by the 11th because it's always possible it could be before it changes to the 12th. It could be around 10 p.m. tonight. We're not sure when. Our watch will not end until it's around evening time, which it normally gets dark in Israel around 6 p.m. So for you to know, you have to go look what is the time in Israel now. And when you see that it is no longer the 12th for Israel, that's when we'll know if this day has passed, if we have not been taken up by then. But our watch does not end until it has turned to the 13th for Israel. And even then, though, now that we can see that tribulation begins on November 18th for us, 19th for the Jews, and of course that will be in the evening, late in the evening for us on that day. But any time until then, even that day, we could have our rapture, and most likely will. If we don't get raptured, then of course we will keep looking until we figure it out together as a fellowship. We never give up on our most blessed hope, but this is such a huge, high probability that this is the day. Now again, as far as the church goes, Jesus is the head of the church. He is the head of our house. And when he was baptized in 28 AD, on the Day of Atonement, he was anointed as our high priest. He was also washed, as we've gone over, in preparation for the marriage. But this is how and why this is when the church was born. Because the church begins and ends with Christ. Now, of course, 3.5 days later, which is actually 3.5 years later, that is when the congregation was born new, born again at Pentecost. But the church being born, that's also what we see in the constellations and what we just saw. with that comet that entered Virgo. That comet that entered Virgo represents Jesus being born, because Jesus is the church. That's how we are also represented as the church body. And that is why we saw the child being born on the Day of Atonement. And of course, we all saw how it was right in front of the head of the dragon. So the child was born representing the church, representing Jesus on the Day of Atonement. And as I just went over in my last video, it is the commandment of the Lord that a month later that all firstborn be redeemed, exactly at a month. And of course, again, the 11th for us, the 12th for the Jews, is exactly 1 month after the Day of Atonement. The Day of Atonement was the 10th day of Tishri, the first month, and now it is the 10th day of the second month. And just like we saw on Friday, April 11th, in the year 32 AD, when Jesus was crucified, and then just 2 days later, when he resurrected, and all the Old Testament saints were taken up to heaven as the first fruits offering, that is when we saw Jupiter right in between the horns of Taurus. We unbelievably are seeing the exact same thing right now for our wedding day, for our harvest, for our rapture. But what's more interesting about ours is we're also seeing Uranus, which represents the kingdom of heaven, in the coming judge at the same time. Something else that's also very interesting is that today we are exactly 70 days out from when President Trump retakes the White House, which of course, as most of us understand and realize, is amazing. But what's also very difficult about it is realize if we are all taken out of the way, everybody who's looking so forward to the opportunity for their world to be fixed and things to get better, it's going to be taken from all of them so very, very quickly. And it's going to be so difficult for the Jews. And they will have no one to turn to but God. And while we have seen so many of the Jews in Israel turning to God, they're going to have to turn to Him in a big, big way when there are no Christians left in this world to be there to help them and support them along the way. And I think this is probably a big part of God's divine plan, because you want to talk about crushing people, them having a little bit of hope, and then when we're all gone, it'll be nothing but lawlessness. And everyone who doesn't turn to the Antichrist and Satan, they're going to have to turn to God very, very quickly and turn to know Jesus right away. And as we can see clearly right here, Saturn, which does represent the Jews, is right in the pouring out of wrath. So we know the time is near. We can all see it. We've known it for a long time. But look, I just wanted to come on here with you, brothers and sisters, so that everybody understood and nobody thought that the day had passed, because it hasn't. Just go search in time in Israel now. And you know, if it has not changed yet, which it hasn't, until it changes to November 13th, we are under high watch this entire time. And I love you all very, very much. And I just wanted to come on here and make sure that everybody had some clarity on here. And everybody had some understanding. And so we can all pray with all of our might together as one family in unison that this is it. Because everything everything is pointing to this being it. I love you all, and I hope I see you all in the sky. But if not, don't worry. I'll be back on with y'all very soon, and we will figure it out one way or another. Please take a moment to leave me a like so this will get out to other brothers and sisters as quickly as possible. Please be sure and share it. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Thank you all for being here with me. I appreciate each and every one of you very, very much. And I hope this gave some real clarity and understanding to some things. I will see you all very soon.